In this video, we're going to be looking at the link between gut health and hormonal imbalance. So we're going to talk a little bit about how the gut can affect things like estrogen levels, thyroid function, as well as your circadian rhythm. And then we're going to dive into the 5 main things that you can start doing today to improve your gut health and support your hormones. Now, if you're brand new here, hello and welcome. My name is Jermaine. I'm an integrative nutrition health coach who helps women to balance their hormones naturally. Now, before we dive into this, I do want to say that the topic of gut health is a very rich one that people spend their entire lives just studying and researching and writing papers on. So this is going to be very much a high level overview just so you can understand how and why this is important for you. Okay, so when it comes to the gut, the main thing to understand here is that it can affect hormones in 2 ways. So either it directly produces hormones or it regulates the production of hormones in some other part of the body. All right, so here, whether it's things like cortisol or leptin and ghrelin, which are both appetite and hunger hormones that can also affect weight, whether we're talking about neurotransmitters, so things like serotonin, dopamine, GABA, as well as noradrenaline. Doesn't matter which hormones we're talking about. In general, there's going to always be some way, some pathway in which it is affected by the gut. So to make this more concrete for you, let's start by talking about estrogen. So in the gut, there is a group of hormones known as the estrobolome, and the estrobolome does 3 main things. So first, it metabolizes estrogen. It also balances the amount of circulating estrogen in the body, and thirdly, it regulates how much estrogen we excrete or eliminate from the body. Okay, so based on this, you can already see that if there is an imbalance in the overall health of your gut, especially in the balance of your gut flora, that there's also going to be a negative impact on the estrobolome and how well it helps you to regulate estrogens. Now, this is a very rich topic, so I'm going to make a separate video that will dive a little bit more into this, because there is some research that talks about how all of this can affect estrogen-driven conditions. So things like fibroids, endometriosis, weight gain, and even PCOS. A lot of those can be affected in different ways just by the health of the estrobolome. So we'll talk about that in a separate video, but I just want to give you a quick introduction today. Now, the second thing is the thyroid, and here again there is also some very interesting research. For example, there's research showing that people who don't have a diverse colony of gut microbes, that they tend to have higher TSH levels. Now, TSH is your thyroid stimulating hormone. Second thing is that there's also some research that shows that people with hyperthyroidism, so this is an overactive thyroid, they tend to have an imbalance in very specific bacterial strains in the gut. So for example, they will tend to have low levels of bifidobacterium and lactobacillus, and then they would tend to have higher levels of enterococcus. Okay, and then lastly, the conversion of T4 to T3. So thyroid makes mostly T4, which is an inactive, and it has to be converted to T3, which is the active form. And the gut is actually responsible for approximately 20% of that conversion. So what that then means is that, again, if there's an imbalance in the gut, if there's gut inflammation, then you can potentially have that conversion process be impaired. Okay, and just as a side note, the other organ in the body that converts a significant portion of T4 to T3 is the liver. Again, another hormone, another organ that we talk about on this channel quite frequently when it comes to hormone imbalance. Now, the third thing we're going to talk about is your circadian clock, and specifically melatonin. Okay, so the circadian clock is all about regulating our wake and sleep cycle. Melatonin is a hormone that plays a significant and important role in helping us fall asleep. And there is research that shows that there is a specific set of microbes that is sensitive to melatonin. Okay, and basically what happens is that as the levels of melatonin go up, the levels of those microbes also goes up in the body. And what researchers are saying now is that this is potentially suggesting to us that we have different clocks going on in the body. So not only do we have our circadian clock, but we also have basically a bacterial clock. and they most likely work hand in hand together. It's not 100% clear exactly how, but there is more and more research that is going on around all of this, okay? And those are just the 3 things that I wanted to share with you when it comes to why you'd want to pay attention to your gut. There is tons more research out there similar to this that you're free to look into. I will include links to the references that I've used as far as the research for the research studies that are mentioned in this video, okay? So I hope that gave you some idea of why this is important. So now let's segue into the 5 main things that you can do to support your gut. The first and most important is going to be eating whole foods. Now, I'm sure this is not a big shock, but it is worth reiterating. You want to eat more whole foods simply because what we want to do is make sure that we keep inflammation in the gut at a minimum, and whole foods are the best way to do that, okay, because they are not processed or refined in any way. In addition, whole foods, a lot of them contain prebiotics. So prebiotics basically is a type of fiber that acts as food or fertilizer in the gut, and what it does is it then helps to promote the growth of the good bacteria, which we also call probiotics. So whole foods are going to be the best way for you to get more of those prebiotics into your body. All right, so that's the first thing. The second thing is you want to avoid the common allergens. So we're talking here about wheat, dairy, soy, and corn. For a lot of people, those can trigger inflammation in the gut, and again, we're trying to keep that low, so you want to avoid those foods as much as possible. Third thing is to get more minerals into your body. So certainly the first point I made about eating whole foods will help you do that naturally, but also you want to potentially focus on things like bone broth or veggie broths, because you get a lot of minerals from those. Juicing is another great way to get more of those minerals. I'm also drinking smoothies, although for some people smoothies can sometimes be irritating, especially if there's a lot of digestive issues, okay? But smoothies are another option. And then herbal tea infusion. So there are herbs that are known for being very, very high and rich in minerals. Nettle is one that I talk about on this channel. I've done a video about it, so I'll link to that. Oat straw is another one. Making overnight tea infusions from those will be very beneficial. Another way for you to get more minerals into your body. Those minerals are going to help, particularly when it comes to with leaky gut. So if you have leaky gut, which is basically where the lining of the gut is not intact, having more minerals and certainly just having more nutrients in your body will help significantly to help that lining to heal. Number 4, again, would be staying away from refined foods of all kinds. So we don't want the refined sugars or refined fats. We certainly don't want things that have a lot of additives and preservatives and dyes in them. So all of those have to be off the table while you are healing your body. And then number 5 is working on stress and mindset. So the reason why this is very important, and for some people this can even be more important than the food, is that our thoughts, our perception, our self-talk, all of that can either put us in a state of relaxation or in a state of survival. If we're in a state of survival, we're in a state of fight or flight, and that means that the HPA axis is activated, which means we are now basically just running that inflammatory response in overdrive. And if we stay there for a long period of time, then there's just more inflammation going on. Okay, so how you handle this is going to be a very personal thing, because there are so many factors that play into our overall mindset and our perception of ourselves and the world around us. Okay, so it's not only what's happening to us right at this moment, but it's also to do with trauma and past experiences and what we've dealt with and what we've not dealt with. All of those are going to affect that ultimately. In fact, there is even some research that talks about how some hormonal imbalances, how there is a correlation, not necessarily a direct cause and effect, but a correlation between women having traumatic experiences in childhood and the prevalence of PMS and PMDD and basically a lot of different things to do with reproductive health. So there is potentially a correlation there, and I'll do a separate video again to dive more into that. So taking care of this is super important. It's a personal decision. It's all about personal growth and spiritual growth, but finding ways to address this, whether it's through working with a therapist, whether it's through doing meditation, mindfulness practice, things like EFT to reprogram your mind in different ways. There's lots of different options. And again, it's a very personal thing, but it's definitely something that you really want to take seriously, because it can be just as impactful, if not even more impactful than the food, okay? Now, before I wrap up, there are some bonus things that are generally talked about when it comes to health, to gut health. So one of them is probiotics, whether you're eating fermented food or taking probiotic supplements. Now, again, these are not a must-have. It is not the only way to heal your gut. So if you never eat fermented foods, doesn't mean you can't have a healthy gut, okay? But that is an option to consider. And then lastly, also avoiding pesticide-heavy foods. Now, if you can afford to eat organic 100% of the time, great. If you are on a budget and would want to pick and choose, then I would suggest that you download the Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen list from the Environmental Working Group. I will place a link to those lists in the description section. But basically, those lists just cover the main foods that tend to be very high in pesticide residue and the ones that have lower amounts of pesticide residue. So you can decide which ones you buy organic, which ones you buy conventional, okay? So that is it for this video. I hope that you found this information helpful. I have a more detailed article that goes along with this video, so I'll also link to that in the description section below. But if you found this beneficial, I would appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up, as always. And of course, feel free to share this with anybody else that would benefit from this information. If you have questions or feedback of any kind, feel free to leave them below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.